She was young, brilliant, and full of life until one ordinary night turned into an unspeakable tragedy. What happened to Reagan Tokes shook an entire state, exposed terrifying flaws in the justice system, and ignited a movement for change. This is the heartbreaking story of a life stolen too soon, the failures that allowed it, and the unstoppable legacy that was born from unimaginable loss.
Reagan Tokes was the kind of young woman whose smile could light up any room. Born on March 13, 1995, she grew up in the quiet town of Malmy, Ohio, where she thrived both academically and socially. Throughout her childhood and teenage years, Reagan was known for her kindness, determination, and infectious optimism. At Anthony Wayne High School, she maintained a 4.5 GPA while also competing in varsity lacrosse and tennis. Friends described her as driven yet humble, someone who always made time to lift others up. Her teachers saw in her a rare combination of intelligence, athleticism, and compassion. After graduating high school, Reagan took the next step toward her dreams by enrolling at The Ohio State University. She majored in psychology, with aspirations to help people and make a real difference in the world, while balancing the pressures of college. Reagan also worked part-time at a restaurant in downtown Columbus. She was fiercely independent, managing her own life while her family had relocated to Florida. On the evening of February 8, 2017, Reagan finished her shift at Bodega, a popular gastropub where she waitress Ed. Around 9:45 p.m., she sent a text to her roommate, saying she was heading home. It was a night like any other, but fate had something tragic in store. Unbeknownst to Reagan, danger lurked nearby, hidden in the darkness. Brian Goldsby, a recently released felon, was roaming downtown Columbus that evening. He had a history of violence, but had been released with minimal supervision. When Reagan reached her car, Goldsby attacked, forcing her into her own vehicle at gunpoint. In a terrifying ordeal, he drove her to ATMs, withdrawing cash, and later sexually assaulted her. Through it all, Reagan complied, likely clinging to the hope of survival, praying for a chance to escape. But Goldsby had no intention of letting her live. He took her to Scioto Grove Metro Park, a wooded area far from city lights. There, under the cover of night, he ordered her to strip and walk into the open field. With chilling cruelty, he shot Reagan twice in the head, leaving her body exposed to the cold February night. The next morning, a jogger discovered her lifeless body, sparking a wave of sorrow and outrage across the state. Brian Goldsby's release from prison was meant to be a new start under supervision. Instead, it exposed grave flaws in Ohio's system of monitoring violent offenders. Goldsby had served 6 years for kidnapping and robbery. Before being released in November 2016, he was placed at the Exit Program in Columbus, a halfway house managed by the non-profit Nisar Inc. Although he was required to wear a GPS ankle monitor, no one monitored his movements in real time. Parole officers lacked the resources or authority to properly track him or react to his growing list of violations. In the weeks leading up to Reagan's murder, Goldsby committed a string of robberies around Columbus. Each incident should have triggered a swift response. but the warnings went unheeded. He roamed the streets freely, despite wearing a GPS device that recorded his every move. Yet no one reviewed the data in time to prevent tragedy. Goldsby's case was a chilling reminder of how cracks in the system can have deadly consequences. Each failure compounded until it cost an innocent woman her life. Public outrage followed, demanding answers about how such a preventable crime occurred. The Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction faced intense scrutiny and criticism. In the wake of the murder, Reagan's grieving family filed a wrongful death lawsuit. They alleged that the state and Nisar Inc. had negligently allowed a dangerous man to roam free. The legal battle was long and painful, dragging the Tokes family through memories they wished they could forget. Ultimately, the state was shielded by sovereign immunity, and the case against it was dismissed. However, the Tokes family reached a settlement with Nisar Inc. No amount of money could ever heal the wound, but it was a small acknowledgement of the wrongs done. Meanwhile, Goldsby's criminal trial moved forward with overwhelming evidence against him. DNA, GPS data, and Reagan's cell phone records painted a damning picture of his actions. In March 2018, Goldsby was convicted on multiple charges, including aggravated murder and rape. Although the death penalty was considered, he was ultimately sentenced to life without parole.
Reagan's family was determined that her death would not be in vain. Fueled by grief, anger, and love, they pushed for meaningful change. Their efforts culminated in the introduction of the Reagan Tokes Act. The legislation aimed to reform how violent offenders were monitored after release. Key provisions of the act allowed for indefinite sentencing for violent felons. It also enhanced the ability to immediately act on parole violations. In June 2018, Governor John Kasich signed the Reagan Tokes Act into law. It was a bittersweet victory, progress forged from unimaginable pain, yet the road to full reform was far from smooth. Parts of the act were challenged in court on constitutional grounds, sparking heated legal debates. Still, Reagan's story remained in the public consciousness. Her case became a rallying cry for victim advocacy and criminal justice reform nationwide. Media coverage amplified her legacy, ensuring that Reagan's name would not be forgotten. Her tragedy was profiled on Dateline NBC, on the case with Paula Zahn, and other major platforms. Beyond the legislation, Reagan's family also founded the Reagan Delaney Tokes Memorial Foundation. The foundation focuses on supporting young people and advocating for safer communities. Through scholarships, community initiatives, and outreach programs, Reagan's light continues to shine. She may have been silenced, but her impact only grew stronger. Her family often speaks publicly about her kindness, intelligence, and love for life. Their mission is to protect others from suffering the same fate. Each victory, each piece of change, carries Reagan's spirit forward. Her story is a sobering reminder of the cost of inaction and the power of action born from loss. Even in death, Reagan Tokes continues to inspire hope, courage, and justice for countless others. Her voice, once stolen, now echoes louder than ever.
Today we're taking a deep dive into a really tough story. The story of Reagan Tokes. She was a 21-year-old Ohio State student, and her abduction and murder back in February 2017, well, it led to some major legal reforms in Ohio.
Yeah, it's a deeply tragic case. We're looking at the Wikipedia page on her murder, and our goal isn't just to recount the events, as heartbreaking as they are.
Right. It's also about digging into the systemic problems it kind of brought to light and understanding the changes, like the Reagan Tokes Act that came afterward.
Exactly. It's about connecting that one terrible event to the bigger picture of, how we manage offenders and try to keep the public safe. This case really exposed some weaknesses.
It really did. It forces you to look beyond just the crime itself and ask, okay, what allowed this to happen and how did the system respond?
So let's start with Reagan herself. Who was she?
Well, she was born in '95, grew up in Ohio near Toledo, and by all accounts, just a really bright light. Huge potential.
Not like academically gifted.
Oh yeah, 4.5 GPA in high school. Played sports, lacrosse, tennis. Had a younger sister. And Ohio State, that was her dream school.
Always wanted to go there.
Yep. Started out pre-med, but then found her calling in psychology. She had big plans.
What kind of plans?
She was set to graduate that May 2017. Wanted to work at the Cleveland Clinic, get a graduate degree, and eventually, open her own practice.
Wow. Really driven.
Totally. She was working part-time, too, at a place called Bodega in Columbus's Short North area.
Yeah.
Just building that life she imagined.
And there's that detail about the diploma frame.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking. Only days before she was killed, she posted on social media about picking out a frame for her diploma. Just full of excitement for the future.
God, that really hits home, the loss of all that potential. And it stands in such stark contrast to the person responsible for her death, Brian Goldsby.
It really does.
Yeah.
Now, we need to be careful not to excuse his actions, obviously, but understanding his background is kind of key to understanding the systemic side of this.
Right. So what do we know about him?
Goldsby was born in '88. He claimed a pretty rough childhood, abusive mother, substance abuse issues. He also mentioned being raped as a child.
But there were questions about that.
Yeah, prosecutors pointed out inconsistencies in his story. He gave different ages, like 10, 12, 13 different locations, too.
Right.
So that part was disputed.
But his criminal history wasn't disputed.
Not at all. Extensive juvenile record. Things like trespassing, theft, shoplifting, damaging property, even threatening his own mother. And really disturbingly, a juvenile assessment flagged him for allegedly raping young children and being in the Crips gang.
So a clear pattern of, escalating and dangerous behavior from a young age.
Definitely. This wasn't just out of the blue, and that pattern continued, tragically, into his adult life. His prior major offense is crucial context here.
Okay, what was that?
This is chilling. In November 2010, he abducted a pregnant woman and her 2-year-old son at knife point.
Oh my God.
He orally raped her right in front of her child, forced her to go to ATMs, get cash out, then took her back to her home, raped her again, and stole a DVD player.
That poor woman. Did she testify?
Understandably, she refused. She was terrified for herself and her kids. And this is where the system arguably faltered significantly.
How so?
He managed to plead down the charges to robbery and attempted rape. This was in May 2011. He got 2 6-year sentences, but they were concurrent.
Concurrent, so running at the same time, meaning 6 years total, essentially.
Exactly, 6 years total. And with credit for time served before the plea, he was actually released after only about 5.5 years. That was November 2016.
5.5 years for that. And did his behavior in prison suggest rehabilitation?
Well, that's another huge red flag. He racked up 52 infractions while he was inside. 52. Moved between 5 different prisons.
Wow. That doesn't sound like someone who's turned things around.
Not at all. Yet he was released. And upon release, he was registered as a Tier 3 sex offender.
Which is the highest risk level, right, for reoffending?
That's typically what it signifies, yes. Highest risk. Which makes what happened next even more alarming.
Okay, so he's out, Tier 3 offender. What kind of supervision was he under?
He was given a GPS ankle monitor by a re-entry program called Alvis. But, and this is critical, the monitoring wasn't active. They weren't really watching the data in real time.
Wait, why not?
Apparently, his history actually barred him from Alvis's main program. So he was put in temporary housing through a different group, the Exit program.
And were they monitoring him?
No,
Uh-huh.
they didn't actively monitor him either. He had a curfew, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., but he could get exceptions if he claimed he had work. So lots of unsupervised time. And his parole officer.
Also not actively monitoring him, it's staggering. He actually violated parole several times before the murder.
What kind of violations?
Things like letting the GPS battery die, staying away from his housing overnight, but they were logged as non-severe.
Non-severe, even for a Tier 3 offender. Meanwhile,
In January and early February 2017, just weeks before he killed Reagan, he went on a crime spree, 6 robberies.
6. And he wasn't caught.
No, these weren't minor things either. Robberies at knife point, gunpoint. One involved another abduction, forcing a victim to an ATM. He even pistol whipped someone.
Unbelievable. He's committing violent felonies while supposedly under supervision, and nothing happens.
Nothing until it was too late. They had scheduled a parole violation hearing for him. Finally, it was set for February 23rd. He might have gone back to prison then.
But Reagan was murdered before that.
Yes, on February 8th, 2017.
Okay, walk us through that night.
Reagan worked her shift at Bodega. Goldsby, based on later investigation and his GPS, kind of just roaming downtown Columbus near OSU, North High Street. He took a bus downtown and then just hung around near Bodega for about an hour.
Waiting.
Seems like it. Around 9:45 p.m., as Reagan left work, he confronted her with a gun. forced her into her own car.
He claimed later he just wanted money initially.
That was his claim, yeah. He made her drive to 2 ATMs first, a Chase Bank, then a Huntington. But the withdrawals didn't go through, declined.
Then what happened?
They stopped. In an alley. GPS shows them there at 10:18 p.m. for about 12 minutes.
That's when investigators believed the rape occurred.
Yes. The physical evidence, the rape kit, confirmed it later. After that horrific act, he forced her back to the first ATM, the Chase. And this time, she was able to withdraw $60.
Just $60.
Just $60. They also stopped at a couple of gas stations later that evening. A Sunoco, then a Turkey Hill.
And at some point, he decides he has to kill her.
That seems to be the chilling reality. He decided he couldn't let her report him. She begged for her life, according to his later confessions.
He didn't care?
No. He drove her out to Scioto Grove Metro Park, forced her to get naked, marched her out into a field, and shot her. Twice in the head, close range, just before midnight.
Absolutely horrific. Just devastating.
The callousness afterwards is just hard to fathom.
What did he do immediately after?
He took her car, drove it to his girlfriend's place. They went to McDonald's together around 1:45 a.m. And then he gave the girlfriend Reagan's purse and wallet as a gift.
A gift. Reagan's belongings.
Yeah. Later, he tried to get rid of the evidence, tossed the gun and the shell casings into a sewer drain, tried to set Reagan's car on fire, but didn't succeed.
Just pure evil. How did the investigation unfold? When did people realize Reagan was missing?
Her parents got worried pretty quickly. She always called after work and she texted them she would. When she didn't, they knew something was wrong. Her phone went dead around 2 a.m.
So the next day.
The next day, February 9th, they found out she'd missed her classes at OSU. That confirmed their fears. They filed a missing person report.
And her body was found that same day.
Tragically, yes. Discovered in Scioto Grove Metro Park. She was initially identified by a tattoo and a necklace she wore. Her uncle later made the official identification.
The autopsy confirmed the cause of death.
Yes, 2 gunshots to the head. One was at very close range. And incredibly, they found Reagan's DNA inside the barrel of the gun he eventually led them to.
Wow. And the car?
A license plate reader actually scanned her plate after Goldsby abandoned it. They found the car in southeast Columbus. Inside and nearby, they found cigarette butts.
With his DNA?
With Goldsby's DNA, yes. And remember those gas station stops? There was a gas can in the car, and it matched one car. Goldsby was caught on camera buying that night.
The pieces were coming together fast.
Very fast. The GPS data from his ankle monitor was crucial. It placed him at bodega, the ATMs, the alley, the park where the car was dumped. The rape kit confirmed his DNA. Gunshot residue was on his clothes.
The evidence sounds overwhelming.
It was. He was arrested just 2 days later on February 11th.
Did he confess right away?
Not fully. Initially, he admitted forcing her to the ATMs and going to the park. But he denied the rape and denied having a gun.
But then he changed his story.
Yeah, he tried to blame someone else, made up this accomplice he called TJ, claimed TJ forced him to do everything and was the one who shot Reagan.
A complete fabrication.
Totally. But while he was in jail awaiting trial, he spilled the beans. He confessed the actual details to a friend and also to the mother of his child.
Those confessions must have been key at trial.
Absolutely. So the trial proceedings got underway. Jury selection started in February 2018.
Did they try to move the trial?
His defense asked for a change of venue. Yeah, but that was denied. The trial started March 5th.
What was the prosecution's approach?
They laid out what they called the night of terror that Reagan endured, step by step. They even took the jurors to the crime scenes.
Powerful. And the evidence presentation.
Reagan's roommates identified her purse. Goldsby's ex-girlfriend testified about him giving it to her. They showed the video of his police interrogation.
And the forensic evidence.
Crucial. The sperm evidence from the rape kit, his DNA inside the gun barrel, plus those confessions he made from jail were presented. The coroner's testimony about the gunshot wounds was very graphic and difficult.
What was the defense strategy?
They tried to argue he acted out of panic, didn't really hold up against the evidence of calculation, like deciding to kill her to silence her.
And the verdict.
On March 13th, which incredibly would have been Reagan's 23rd birthday, the jury found him guilty on all counts. Aggravated murder, kidnapping, rape, robbery.
Guilty on her birthday. But what about the sentence? Ohio has the death penalty.
It does, but the jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision on death. It was 8 jurors for death, 4 for life without parole.
So no death penalty then?
Correct. Because it wasn't unanimous, the death penalty was off the table. On March 21st, the judge formally sentenced him to life in prison without any possibility of parole.
Did the judge comment on the sentence?
Yes, the judge made a point of contrasting Goldsby's life being spared by the jury with the life he so brutally took from Reagan. It was a powerful moment.
And what about those other robberies he committed?
After the murder conviction and sentencing, he pleaded guilty to all 6 of those earlier robberies from January and February 2017.
So he's held accountable for those too. Where is he now?
He's incarcerated at the Ohio State Penitentiary, serving that life sentence.
Were there appeals?
Goldsby filed one initially, but then dropped it. Interestingly, the prosecutor's office actually filed a cross-appeal.
Appealing what? He got life without parole.
They appealed for the death penalty. They argued the judge made errors in instructing the jury about mitigating factors, specifically about how to weigh Goldsby's disputed childhood rape claims.
That's unusual. Appealing to get a death sentence after a life sentence was imposed.
It is. The case went up to the appeals court, then the Ohio Supreme Court. But before the Supreme Court could rule, there was a change. A new district attorney was elected.
And the new DA had a different view.
Apparently. The new DA decided to withdraw the state's appeal. So the Ohio Supreme Court dismissed the case and the life sentence stood.
So that part of the legal battle ended there.
Yes. The focus then really shifted more towards Reagan's legacy and the systemic changes her death spurred.
Let's talk about that. Her family, how did they channel their grief?
They showed incredible strength. Her funeral was February 14th, 2017. Soon after, they established the Reagan Tokes Memorial Foundation.
What does the foundation do?
It has a few key missions: providing scholarships for students, funding self-defense education, and really importantly, advocating for legislative reform like the law eventually named after her.
And Ohio State University honored her too.
Yes. In a very moving ceremony in May 2017, OSU awarded Reagan her psychology degree posthumously. Her family accepted it. They read a statement about the value of education, about making a difference, even through their heartbreak.
That's incredibly powerful. Were there other memorials?
Yes. There was initially a rock garden at Scioto Grove Park where she was found. That was later replaced with a dedicated Tranquility Garden dedicated in June 2019.
What's the Tranquility Garden like?
It sounds beautiful. It has swings, paths, lots of plants, including buckeye trees for OSU. There's a Celtic love symbol, a pond, and a plaque with her favorite color, Tiffany blue. And apparently the design looks like an angel from above.
That's a lovely tribute.
Her parents said its creation brought them some solace, helped ease the pain associated with the park. There's also another memorial on OSU's campus, a yellow magnolia tree, and a plaque near Mirror Lake.
Her memory is clearly being kept alive. Did the family pursue any civil action against the state or the programs that failed to monitor Goldsby?
They did. In May 2018, they sued the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, the ODRC, and also NISR Inc., which was the parent company for that exit housing program.
What was the basis of the lawsuit?
Negligence. They argued that the failure to properly monitor Goldsby, despite his history and risk level, directly contributed to Reagan's death.
What happened with those suits?
The lawsuit against the state, against ODRC, was dismissed. The courts ruled that there wasn't a special relationship, legally speaking, that would create a specific duty for the state to protect Reagan from Goldsby.
So the state wasn't found legally liable in civil court?
Correct. The family appealed that dismissal up to the Ohio Supreme Court, but the court declined to hear the case.
And the suit against a private company, NISR Inc.?
That one continued for a while. It was actually set for trial in 2020, but it was ultimately settled out of court before trial. The terms weren't disclosed.
Okay, so that brings us to the legislative changes. The Reagan Tokes Act. This feels like the most direct systemic response.
Absolutely. Reagan's parents were incredibly strong advocates. They pushed hard for change. The Reagan Tokes Act was introduced, and the first part was signed into law in December 2018.
What does the core part of the act do?
It fundamentally changes sentencing for serious felonies in Ohio, specifically first and second degree felonies. Judges now have to impose an indeterminate sentence. That means a minimum term and a maximum term.
And how is the maximum set?
The maximum can be up to 150% of the minimum sentence given by the judge. So if the minimum is 10 years, the maximum could be up to 15 years.
So it's not a fixed sentence anymore for these crimes. How is release decided?
The presumption is that the offender will be released after serving the minimum term. However,
There's a catch.
yes, the ODRC, the prison system, can prevent that release if they find the inmate has engaged in certain kinds of improper conduct while locked up, or if they determine the inmate still poses a continued threat.
Based on what factors?
Things like time spent in restrictive housing, like solitary confinement, or maintaining a high security classification. If those flags exist, it triggers an administrative hearing.
And that hearing can extend the sentence.
Exactly. The hearing board can decide to keep the inmate incarcerated beyond their minimum sentence up to the maximum term set by the judge.
So it introduces a mechanism for keeping supposedly dangerous individuals incarcerated longer based on their behavior inside.
That's the idea. It directly addresses the Goldsby situation, where someone with many prison infractions was still released relatively early.
Does the act include anything about earning time off for good behavior?
It does allow for sentence reduction between 5 and 15% for what's called exceptional conduct or completing specific rehabilitative programs. But there's a big caveat.
Which is?
It requires court approval, victims and prosecutors have to be notified, and crucially, sex offenders are not eligible for these reductions.
Okay. And did the act address the monitoring issues too?
Yes. That initial law mandated a study on how to reduce prisoner homelessness upon release and how to improve GPS monitoring. Then, later parts of the Act, passed as HB 166, specifically tackled things like parole officer caseloads, trying to make them more manageable, improving reentry programs, and further beefing up GPS monitoring standards.
So a multifaceted approach trying to close the gaps Goldsby fell through.
That was clearly the intent, trying to fix the sentencing, the supervision, the reentry support.
Has the Reagan Tokes Act faced legal challenges? I imagine something changing sentencing so significantly would.
Oh, definitely. Pretty quickly, actually. In November 2019, a judge down in Hamilton County ruled parts of it unconstitutional.
On what grounds?
Separation of powers, mainly. The judge argued that letting the ODRC, part of the executive branch, effectively extend a sentence decided by a judge that the judicial branch violated that principle also raised due process concerns.
Did other courts agree?
It got complicated. Different appellate courts in Ohio came to conflicting conclusions. Some upheld the law, others agreed with the Hamilton County judge.
So it ended up at the Ohio Supreme Court.
Inevitably, yes. The Supreme Court took up the issue to provide a statewide ruling. In July 2023, they issued their decision. They upheld the law. In a 5-2 vote, they found the Reagan Tokes Act constitutional.
So the indeterminate sentencing system is currently the law of the land in Ohio for these felonies.
That's correct. It survived the major legal challenge.
This whole story, the crime, the aftermath, the legal changes, it got a lot of media attention, didn't it?
Huge attention. Locally, the Columbus Dispatch named it one of the top 10 stories of 2017. And nationally, it was covered by major true crime shows.
Like Dateline.
Yeah, Dateline NBC, On the Case with Paula Zahn, True Crime Daily, Criminal Confessions, Killer Cases. A lot of exposure.
And that media coverage probably played a role in raising awareness and maybe even pushing for the reforms.
Absolutely. It put a spotlight on the systemic failures and the human cost. It amplified the Tokes family's voice and created pressure for lawmakers to act.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways? Reagan Tokes' story is just devastating, obviously, but its impact is undeniable.
It truly is. It's a powerful, tragic illustration of what can happen when systems designed to monitor dangerous offenders fail. The impact on her family, the community, it's immense.
And the Reagan Tokes Act is the direct result, trying to prevent this specific kind of tragedy again by changing sentencing and supervision.
Right. It forces Ohio specifically, but really all of us, to confront these really tough questions about balancing punishment, rehabilitation, and public safety. These goals often conflict, you know?
Yeah, how do you weigh them? The act tries to recalibrate that balance with this indeterminate sentencing idea, but it's complex.
Very complex. What are the pros and cons of letting administrative bodies, rather than just judges, have so much say over release dates? How do you accurately assess future risk? These aren't easy questions.
No, they aren't. And beyond the law, there's the human element, the legacy.
Exactly. The work of the Reagan Tokes Memorial Foundation, that beautiful Tranquility Garden. They're such powerful reminders. Reminders of a life lost, yes, but also of the incredible resilience people can show.
The desire to create something positive out of unimaginable pain.
It really speaks to the strength of the human spirit, doesn't it? And the importance of community support when tragedy strikes.
It really does. It leaves you thinking, how do we collectively respond to such loss? And what positive change can emerge, even from the darkest circumstances? What will Reagan's lasting legacy truly be, years down the road?
A question worth pondering.